Hi everyone. It's generally difficult to give the last talk of the day, specifically at the end of such a productive day that you've been editing Wikipedia. Um, so I'm doing my best to entertain you. This and by My plan is to summarize my last 6 years of research into 10 minutes presentation. It's gonna be funny, I'm sure. During those 6 years, I've been working with great researchers from different institutions, including Scott, Milena, Ruth, who are in the room, Bernie, and Mark, who've been here in the morning and probably are drinking somewhere now already. Uh, and lots of other interesting people from other institutions. I've been studying conflict and editorial wars in Wikipedia. Normally, I start my presentations by asking the audience how many people know what Wikipedia is and who has ever edited Wikipedia. Well, that's going to be silly to ask that question now. I'm going to ask you how many of you have ever experienced or got involved in any sort of editorial wars on Wikipedia? Yeah, quite. If you have been editing Wikipedia massively, or even not quite massively, moderately, you surely have experienced some sort of conflicts at different levels. Of course, not all of the editorial wars escalate to something quite massive, but many of them, and some of them even make it to appear on public news media because they escalate that much that uh, yeah. They make it to news. So we thought it's an important topic to study. And usually, if you read Wikipedia, you don't see those things behind the scene wars and behind the scene conflicts. Uh, just to give you an overall picture how editorial wars in Wikipedia look like, I tried to find a good visualization, but I ended up with this. Which is, I think, the best way of visualizing editorial wars. By the way, this is the International Pillow Fight Day in Budapest. And as you can see, it's very complex and very complicated. The rules are very simple there. Just grab a pillow and hit someone that you want to hit. But you see there is a very complex social dynamics happening there. Uh, this is another social phenomenon, but let's go back to the Pillow Fight Day. And it's pretty much the case in Wikipedia. Lots of things are happening there, group forming, agency, and kind of leader followership relationships between editors. It makes it very hard to study. We narrowed down the whole question of editorial wars to something very simple, and those are reverts. I'm sure most of you know what reverts are. Well, maybe I could quickly review what reverts are. So this is the history of the article, and you see each version there has this option to be undone. So by pressing this, you undo the revision. You revert someone else's contributions. This is primarily designed to kind of control vandalism, but people use this to revert not only vandals, but also senior editors or the editors. If you do that, then the version goes back to the previous version. It's like the undo button. It makes it very easy to follow editorial wars and make a network of reverts between pairs of editors. Well, this is an example here. Each dot here is a single editor who ever edited article on anarchism. Two editors are connected if they have reverted each other at least twice in both directions. And the width of the lines is proportional to the number of times that editors have reverted each other on this article. Well, you see there are a bunch of editors who have spent their lives reverting each other on the article about anarchism. And many other editors who got involved in the war time to time, but they were not fighting that much. Well, this is very complex. I hope you agree with me that it looks like a pillow fight movie that I showed you. And it's a temporal, it has a dynamics. It's just a snapshot, but it grows and it grows over time. I'm not going to talk about the details, but we tried to quantify this messy network, and we came up with a measure of controversy, which measures, quantifies the content, the controversial content of the article, how much war has been ongoing on that specific article. Without the need to read the article or to even be able to read the language edition that we are studying. It's only based on revert networks. So having done that, the first thing that you want to do is to look at the most controversial topics in different languages, and this is the answer. These are the top 10 most controversial articles in 5 different language editions, up to 2010, starting from the beginning of Wikipedia. Well, at the time, George Bush was the most controversial article in English, followed by anarchism, Muhammad, and then other topics, US, Jesus, Christianity, and in other languages as well. You can see many different topics would show up. There are some similarities, of course. Jesus has appeared almost in all the lists among the top 10 most controversial topics, but there are also some local topics that are important only, or they are controversial only in that language edition. For example, in Spanish, you see Club America is a football club, Atletico Bilbao, another football club, FC Barcelona again, football club. So, and Jesus is not here, it's not controversial. There's some people say in Spanish, religion is football, I mean, Jesus is alright. And then in Czech, you see homosexuality, homophobia, sexual orientation, like sex and gender related topics are quite controversial. This gives us a very good impression. I'm not saying a complete or coherent picture, but a very good impression and very nice angle to obsessions of the communities in certain languages who edit these Wikipedia language editions. You could categorize those topics based on the topical categories. Many of them are related to politics and religion. Those are showed here. Politics is the most populated category in many language editions. It's even more populated in Middle Eastern language editions like Persian, Arabic, and Hebrew. Religion itself is quite populated, again in these language editions more than others. Sport, as I said, in Portuguese and Spanish are quite controversial. Interestingly, scientific articles about scientific issues are only controversial in English, German, and French editions, a bit in Japanese too, but they are almost absent from the list of most controversial articles in other language editions. We could map those, at least those ones that are about geography. Many of the controversial articles are about geography, about cities, places, villages. We could map them because they are geolocated. That would be what you get if you do it for English Wikipedia, which doesn't tell you much really, but this is the same map showing the most controversial articles in Chinese Wikipedia, those ones that we could put on the map. Many of them we cannot, and you see there is a very pronounced locality in the pattern. If you do that in Spanish, again, you see Spain is covered, South America, but there are also data points like Israel that are very controversial in that language, and they are not necessarily related to Spanish-related topics. Yeah, let's move on. Of course, as I mentioned, this controversy measure changes over time. It's a function of time, and you can follow it over time. I have an example here. This is controversy as a function of time for the article about Michael Jackson. You see it starts from 0, of course, and then there are some periods that there is a big controversy. If you look at your calendar, you see that those are related to real-world events. Here, he released something. Here, he was awarded. Well, here he died. And whenever there is something happening outside, then there is a burst of reverse and burst of editorial words within Wikipedia, which is an interesting observation itself. But other thing that we did was to categorize articles based on the shape of these curves, and we ended up with 3 main categories. The first category looks like this. It starts from 0, there is a big war, there is a huge conflict, and then editors reach to a consensus, and that's it. Everyone is happy with the article and they leave. And most of the articles with this pattern are things about events in the past. This one is Dresden bombing at the end of the Second World War. There are not many new things about it anymore, so you could reach an agreement at some point. But there are articles like the one here on Japan which has a kind of periodical behavior. There are war periods followed by peace periods. And then there are articles like anarchism that never reach any source of peace or any source of consensus. It's a never-ending war. And articles in this category are like USA, George Bush, anarchism, articles that are controversial intrinsically. We categorize all the controversial articles into these three categories, and the good news is these articles that are never-ending wars, leading to a very large value of controversy measure, are not that many. So most of the articles are peaceful. Most of the controversial articles reach to a consensus at some point. Only very little number compared to all the 4.5 million articles, for example, in English Wikipedia, are never-ending conflicted articles. Good. I'm almost done. Just a few more things. Well, this picture showed a kind of a macro scale image of editorial words on Wikipedia, and it enabled us to kind of do larger scale cross-lingual analysis. But of course, each article has its own story, and these are people editing a Wikipedia. Of course, the people are represented as dots here, but it has much more to that than just this very simplistic visualization. For example, and ideally one should go and read all those discussion pages and the history of the article to see what's really going on each individual article. We couldn't do that. We have done few case studies. This is, for example, this is an example of article on Safavid dynasty, a ruling dynasty in Central Asia that is controversial topic because Persians claim they were Persians and Turks claim, oh, they were Turks. And it's an ongoing fight between Persian editors and Turk editors. This diagram shows those type of editors. Red ones are Turks and blue ones are Persians. And this is based on the discussion page of the article. Arrows show the comments addressing other editors. And if they are red, they are kind of opposing comments. And if they are green, they are supporting comments. You see there are two big guys here fighting all the time. Well, sure. That's fine. Interesting is this bunch of people here, the blue one, who are attacking the red guy from the back, and these red guys here who are attacking the blue guy from the back. So there is lots of group formation and leader-follower relationships there. There are also two other guys here, blue and the red one fighting, and then there are some dodgy guys here who attack the red guy from the back. So there are lots of micro interactions that are important to study as well. This is something that we are doing right now. We define 6 different type of micro interactions between editors. Repeated attack, like one editor attacks the other one repeatedly. By attacking, I mean reverse the other one repeatedly. We have revenge or self-defense. A reverse B and B reverse A back. And some other interactions that I'm not going to explain all, but we counted this type of behavior in the history of Wikipedia, and we realized that some of them are really common. Specifically, these 3 are quite common. If there is a big guy here, it's very likely that they attack the same person within a very short period of time repeatedly. And usually in this case, this guy is more senior than this editor here. When we have a self-defense or revenge, usually both editors are at the same level of seniority. If the person who reverts me is not much more experienced than me, I'm very likely to revert them back. Also, this is quite common that A reverts B, and there is a third guy who goes back and reverts A. And usually this guy is of a lower status as compared to this guy who has made the first revert. Does that ring a bell to those of you who are heavy editors? Well, this guy could be a sock puppet of this guy. Well, B doesn't want to revert A back because, well, he or she doesn't want to fight with the big guy. But then they have a friend or a sock puppet who goes and reverts A back just to support B from a different direction. So we are counting these things, and they are quite present in Wikipedia. Well, you guys know that because you've been active in editing Wikipedia. Many readers do not know these things, and when they read something on Wikipedia, they think, oh, okay, that must be the truth, but this is behind the scene of Wikipedia, which makes the content of Wikipedia sometimes not quite reliable, I would say. The last thing, there is an exception here. I said this is very common to see these kind of revenge patterns. Interestingly, in those languages that we have studied, in Chinese and Japanese Wikipedias were quite different. They didn't have many of those type of interactions. We still don't know why, but it could be just a cultural difference that they don't want to revenge people who have reverted them, which is a good thing, I can say generally. Well, we have a bunch of publications and some high-level reports appearing on media. You could find them on my website. And sorry I took longer than I was allowed to. Thank you.
Well done.